As we saw in our previous example, there are positions where tactics are not visible or are not so easily visible, some hidden somewhere in the endgames, using some very slight tricks to save the pawn, to fight for some squares, and so on. But there are positions, and in practice, this proves very important, where you simply know that there are tactics, and there are lots of tactics. And how do you come to know this? Well, these are usually positions where the kings are exposed. There are lots of possibilities connected with checks, captures, attacks, mating threats, and so on. And all this always involves a great number of tactical possibilities. Now, to be able to illustrate this clearly, I will give you the example from my game against Kožul. Now, in this position, this is actually move 13-9, and both players were in horrible time trouble. I'm sure that none of us had more than half a minute remaining for the remaining two moves, and yet we really had to see quite a number of things in order to be able to profit from this situation. If you take a look, then you will see the main features of the position. You see immediately, or at least you should see immediately, that Black's king on G8 is pretty insecure. What makes him insecure is the following. There is a possibility of Rook B8 check, for instance, after which the only move would be King G7, thus giving us already an idea that if Black would not have the square on G7, then this would be pretty much mate. Already we have some first ideas. It begins to dawn upon us that maybe there could be moves that take this square from him. Other tactical ideas could be connected with the fact that Black's, for instance, queen and the rook are on the same diagonal. So maybe you would think the move bishop f1 could win some material along this diagonal. Other ideas could come to you if you think about the fact that the knight on g4 is pinned and the queen and the king are on the same file. Whereas Black's possibilities are connected with the fact that White's king on h1 is also not very secure. There are possibilities sometimes of knight f2, of rook c1, and other things. And seeing this in time trouble, it is no wonder that Kožul goes bishop h6. Now we see usually this move would not occur. I mean, just it's a move which allows capturing the bishop. But from what we were saying, Black king on g8, possibility of bishop f1, the g file, and the threat of rook b8 change the situation considerably and make bishop h6 almost the most natural move, because after bishop h6, this rook b8 is already a mating threat, and after knight takes h6, we saw that the g file is open and bishop f1 is a possibility, and the move bishop f1, or in fact bishop f3, opening the g file and hitting the queen, would of course win a lot of material and would make the game winning for White. Now, what can Black do in this position to fight against White's ideas? The main idea being rook b8. Of course, it is possible to play something like bishop e5, but this in fact would only solve the problem temporarily. White could attack again with rook a7 threatening rook a8, or with some comparable move. Are there any tactics that we see which could help us work? Well, what we see is that we can also give a check, and the moves which are checks, are to be considered in such positions at first because they are very concrete and easier to calculate. So what checks do we have? Okay, queen g2 does not really come into considerations. We try knight f2 check. Now we see that if he goes king h2, we win with bishop e5 check, which is almost mate. And it does mate after bishop f4, bishop takes f4. So the idea of a check on e5 is already there. Or in fact queen e5, which is also made. So this could not be his idea, to play king h2. And of course we never assume that our opponent missed something like this. We look a bit further and we see that queen takes f2 is a possibility. Because now if I take queen takes f2, this first threat works. It's rook b8, bishop d8, rook d8, mate. And you wonder, can I do something to change this? Can I do something to change the situation in my favor? Of course, then the idea is, can I do something which would disturb his attacking construction and which would use my attacking chances? So that's now the fact that queen on f2 is hanging and the king on h1 is feeble. And then it should occur to us that rook c1 check is a possibility. First of all, it is a check, and the check should always occur. And secondly, it is a move which disturbs white's coordination. If now he takes bishop c1, I simply recapture the queen, and now rook b8, king g7 is no longer made. And if he wants to keep the coordination of his pieces, to keep this mating structure on the back rank, and if he would try king h2, we already saw the answer, which was very strong against king h2. We already saw in our previous line the idea of bishop e5 check. And bishop e5 check also disturbs his coordination and allows me to take on f2 with black's next move. And that's basically it. So we get the main features of the position, we see the threat of our opponent, we see the possibilities of giving checks, we see what he had prepared, and we continue looking at our possibilities and see if they work. And you see how simple it can be. You grasp the essence of the position and you look at your possibilities, at your concrete possibilities, check, 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 and that's it. And in fact, I had to see this with very little time on my clock, with maybe less than a minute on my clock. But that's because the experienced grandmasters, they have a very trained tactical eye, and something like this we see usually, if we are in a good form, we see pretty quickly. And if you will be arduous in your trainings on tactics, if you will bear with us and continue this work, then after a while you could see this just as easily. The main thing, remember the main motives, remember the exposed position of kings, look at your checking possibilities, and the result will be great. So we continue with our next example.